Hello and welcome to the 26th broadcast of the Nerdflix podcast. Today's episode, we will be talking about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Plus, we will also be discussing some big news regarding the movie Spider-Man No Way Home, set to release this December. So let's get started. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Excellent!
Great responsibility.
Use the Force, Luke.
Welcome to the Nerdflix podcast. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory really is a classic film, and the book it is based on is really good, and I do really enjoy this movie. This movie is, of course, about a boy named Charlie Bucket who grows up in a pretty poor family until he finds a golden ticket in a chocolate bar, giving him a tour of Willy Wonka's famous candy factory. And throughout the tour, a lot of crazy stuff happens, but after a series of events at the end, Charlie ends up with ownership of the entire factory and its franchise. Some wonder why they called the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, because the book is actually called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Well, they changed the name because the movie was being sponsored and financed by Quaker Oats. And Quaker Oats, after the movie was released, wanted to release chocolate bars with Willy Wonka on them to help promote them. And they thought it would really promote the candy bars if the movie was named after Willy Wonka himself. So Quaker Oats had them change the name to Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory as opposed to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, Charlie does seem to be the main character, but Willy Wonka plays a very important role as well. In fact, he seems to be the most famous character from that movie and even the book. But Willy Wonka doesn't even show up till nearly halfway through the movie. The first appearance of Willy Wonka, of course, doing his signature falling over into a somersault scene, that was 43 minutes into the movie. So that is nearly halfway through before we even see Willy Wonka at all. A lot of the actors playing the kids in this movie did not stick with acting, and that is the case for Peter Ostrom, the actor who played Charlie Bucket. And he actually became a cattle vet when he stopped being an actor. A lot of the actors playing the kids in this movie did not stick with acting, and that is the case for Peter Ostrom, the actor who played Charlie Bucket. And he actually became a cattle vet when he stopped being an actor. A few years ago, the person who played Mike TV, Paris Themin, was on Jeopardy, and he failed to mention one thing to them: that he played Mike TV. No one had any idea that was him until later someone on the internet figured it out, and it was this huge thing going around the internet. But he didn't even tell the people on Jeopardy that he was Mike TV. The movie does have a few minor continuity errors throughout the film, including the fact that Veruca Salt's hair gets shorter throughout the film. Like, it gets progressively shorter as the film progresses. And that is because they kept cutting and shortening her hair, and you can notice that her hair does get shorter throughout the movie and as the movie progresses. I mentioned back on the Goonies podcast about how all the children's reactions to One-Eyed Willy's ship was completely real because they weren't allowed to see the set beforehand. That is the same with the candy room in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. None of the children had ever seen the set being built or had seen the set before, so they had no idea what it would have looked like. So all of their reactions were real. 1/3 of the candy room was actually edible, and it's pretty big, so that 1/3 was a lot. So 1/3 of that room was actually edible. And the famous chocolate river in the candy room is made of chocolate, cream, and 15,000 gallons of water. And under the hot set lights, it really stunk. One fact that I did learn about Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is actually the reason why I decided to do this episode. I had learned this fact a while ago and thought, well, this is a cool fact, why don't I do an episode on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? And this fact is about the Wonka wash scene. When they're going through the Wonka wash, and this foam comes out of these spouts, that is actually fire extinguisher foam, which gave everyone in the scene rashes for weeks. And now it is time for another segment of product review. So there is a good bit available for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. But first we will go to Amazon with just a general search, Willy Wonka merch. So there's a Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory blankets, of course plenty of t-shirts, the Funko Pops, which we'll get into later, a chocolate bar mold, t-shirts, socks, more t-shirts, the glasses that Wonka wears in the remake, a replica of the golden ticket, a hat, Willy Wonka hat, a costume for a lot of money. But now let's go into the Funko app and actually get into the Funko products made for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So you have a basic Willy Wonka Funko Pop worth $50 because it's going to be an order pop. When was it released? 2015. And then a bunch of other variations of Willy Wonka in different Funko Pop or just Funko figures. Mike TV, released in 2016. And this appears to be Mike TV from, well no, actually it's not. For a second I thought it was Mike TV from the remake, but actually it's the original. But it's $42. A Playmobil Willy Wonka, $41. A 2-pack of Chrome Willy Wonka and an Oompa Loompa. That does not have any value though. That's appearing on the Funko app. That's weird. Veruga Salt, $55. Grandpa Joe, $25. Oompa Loompa, $32. Augustus Gloop, $20. Charlie Bucket, $43. Oompa Loompa Playmobil, $22. Freddy Funko dressed as Willy Wonka, that is worth a whopping $510. A Oompa Loompa bobblehead is $18, and one of my favorite pops available for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Violet's Beauregard, I believe that's how you say her name, but she's blown up into the blueberry like she does in the book and the movie, and that is worth $40. So yeah, the Wonka Funko Pops are older and definitely worth a lot more, but there are some cool ones, and that's basically what is available for Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. In the scene where the Candyman sings about how great Candymen are, he lifts up the door parts, the flip part of a counter that you would see at any candy store, or basically any store or restaurant, and he flips the parts on the counter, and he almost hits a little girl in the chin. If you look closely in the movie, he pulls it up, and this little girl, pulls her head back really fast, and it looks like she got bonked in the chin, but she almost did, but she thankfully pulled her head back fast enough before she could get hit. But it does look, it's very clear, and it does really look like she got whacked right in the chin. There's a whole anti-Grandpa Joe movement on the internet. There is a literal website called I Say No to Grandpa Joe, and it is basically saying that Grandpa Joe is a terrible person. And I can see where they're coming from. Now, I'm not going to go into super detail into this. If you really want to get all the information and all the facts, you can go to that website or just look it up. But basically what they're trying to say is that Grandpa Joe's just this guy who sat in a bed all while his family starved. And then the second he saw a golden ticket, he's like, oh, I'm fine now, I can go to the factory. So basically, people take that really far and say that Grandpa Joe is a terrible person. So it's really kind of fun to look at because they do have somewhat of a point. So I do recommend checking some of that stuff out. The author of the book, Roald Dahl, actually hated the movie adaptation. The actor who played Willy Wonka in the first movie, Gene Wilder, actually hated the remake. And now, I don't think the remake is bad, but I do like the original better. In the scene in which Wonka yells at Charlie and Grandpa Joe, he says, "You get nothing!"
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Actually rehearsed the scene beforehand without Gene Wilder actually yelling at them. So when they filmed it, it was a legit reaction to his yelling. The most weirdest scene in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and perhaps one of the weirdest scenes in movie history, is the boat scene, where they're flying at lightning speeds on a boat through a tunnel, and Wonka starts saying some really creepy things, and these weird images pop up, and some of them go so fast, you can't really tell what they are. But a lot of people on the internet have broken down what it is, so here's what you see. The first thing you see is a flying cockroach. Then a millipede on a human face, like crawling across a human face. That one's pretty easy to see. Then you see a close-up of an eye, a chicken getting its head cut off, Wonka's rival, Arthur Slugworth, a lizard eating a bug, and a close-up of a scorpion's mouth. That is some pretty weird stuff. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is actually going to get a prequel. It is going to be about Willy Wonka as a young adult / teenager, and as he opens the chocolate factory and meets the Oompa Loompas. And it does look very good, but there's not much on it yet. They haven't done much. I don't even know if they started filming, but I know it's going to happen, and it looks really good. The trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home has been released, and the movie looks awesome. The trailer does not confirm nor deny the appearances of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in this film. But besides that, this movie looks really good. I'll sum up the trailer for you. It opens up with Doctor Strange doing some really weird stuff to a train using his powers, and then MJ and Peter talking about how everyone now knows Peter Parker's real name. We see some crazy stuff about a bunch of people trying to get pictures of Spider-Man and Peter Parker, but then later on into the trailer, that's when it starts to get crazy. A bunch of hints to villains start appearing, some more obvious and some not so obvious. We have an obvious hint to Dr. Octopus, his tentacle coming out of some smoke, and of course his face, and he says, "Hello, Peter."
Hello, Peter.
Oh, and also, Peter Parker does go to Doctor Strange for help in making people forget that he is Spider-Man. Now, it also does have some references to Green Goblin returning. We see one of his bombs, and we hear his laughter. We also see some sand and electricity, which could be references to Elektra and Sandman. And then we also do see some stuff hinting to the lizard. They do mention the multiverse, which does make it possible to bring in Tobey and Andrew. But overall, it does look like a really awesome film, and it's set to release December 17th. Okay, and now it is time for another segment of Forgotten Facts. This one is covering Nerdflix number 13, Back to the Future. This one is specifically about Back to the Future Part 2. Now, when they were filming the scene where all those teenagers from 2015 were chasing Marty McFly in the hoverboard, at one point they get thrown off their hoverboards, and all the 2015 teenagers go through the glass wall of the clock tower, which is now a mall in 2015. Well, this was really hard to film stunt-wise, having people go through a glass wall like that. So how it was filmed is that they lifted them up on a crane, they swung them through the glass, and as they came through, they released the cord and they fell onto a mat. So if it went well, then it would have went well for the stunt performers. But if something went wrong, it would have really went wrong, and something did go wrong. They had someone standing on the other side of the glass wall, making sure everyone came through the glass, and so that they could release them and they would fall onto the mat. Well, one of the people on the outside, hung by the cord, actually, instead of going straight through the glass, first hit a pillar, throwing her off course. When they came through the glass and were released off the cords, because she was off course, she missed the mat and hit the ground instead and was severely injured. So things can really go wrong if the stunt is not performed well. Okay, that is it for this episode of the Nerdflix podcast. Thanks so much for listening. And if you are interested in the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, be sure to look it up on YouTube, and you can get all kinds of information on big announcements about the movie online as well. And be sure to listen next week when we cover we're doing a Batman Part 2 episode where we cover Batman's history and the Christian Bale Batman films. So until then, I will see you next time on Nerdflix.
Cyber Anakin! I have the high ground!
I'm Batman. You're a wizard, Harry. 1.21 gigawatts.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.